Hello everyone, welcome back to another 2028 election prediction video. This time we're going to be taking a look at the 2028 Democratic primary. Last time I've done one of these videos like 2 months ago, but that was with a bunch of different candidates, and now we have a lot more different candidates in this one, and it's just based off people who I think are actually going to run. Because right now, I'm thinking Jon Stewart probably doesn't run, and I'm thinking Kamala Harris instead runs for governor of California. Last I heard, she was leaning towards running for governor of California. So that opens up the Democratic primary for a lot of these candidates. And just looking at it, I think these are going to be the top seven. I think these are the ones that everyone's going to be looking at. And we could just take a look at the polling in the Democratic primary here. And these are pretty much the top seven. I mean, Whitmer should also definitely be on this list, in my opinion. And according to the primary polling, she is on this list on this tab here, on this aggregator. But yeah, so these are the top seven candidates, and we're just going to go into it state by state. I'm going to have them, if they're not doing as well, I think I'm going to have them drop out of the race and endorse a candidate that I think they would choose. So yeah, let's get right into it. So starting off, we're going to be using the 2024 Democratic primary schedule for this because this is the simplest way of doing so, and usually the primary states stay pretty much the same in the schedule. Some states get moved up, though. Like we saw California move up back in 2020 when it used to be a later primary state. Maybe we could see New Jersey move up because Cory Booker is probably going to give it a run, and maybe you could convince the governor of New Jersey to move up the primary to Super Tuesday. So honestly, I could see them really doing that because New Jersey's such a late primary. It's like the race is already over at that point. So I really think they would move New Jersey up to Super Tuesday. So we're going to be moving New Jersey up in the calendar as well. All right. So starting off, I do think New Hampshire is going to be the first primary state. I do wonder whether or not they'll get any delegates, however. There's a real chance that they don't, like last time. But I think they convinced the DNC to let them be the first primary state. So you need 15% in the primary to get statewide delegates here in every state. So starting off, who would be the favorite to win New Hampshire? I'm going to say Pete Buttigieg. I think he gets first place in this state. He came very close in 2020. He's doing very well in the primary polls just nationwide. So I think he's going to be a top contender here in the Democratic primary. Who would get second? Someone on the left, someone called AOC. I think she gets second place in the primary. Now who gets third and fourth? I think Josh Shapiro, being a more moderate type of candidate, I think he gets third in this state. And now we're just down to the remaining few. So Cory Booker, Newsom, Whitmer, they're all not getting enough. Well, let's just math it out here. I think Booker would get at least 8%. He did make himself more of a national presence. Newsom and Whitmer, I don't know which one of those would get higher. I think Tim Walz would do good here in this state, but he won't get enough delegates to reach 15%. So let me just take away their delegates. We're going to readjust their delegates now. So there's 5 delegates up for grab. The winner of the primary would definitely get 2 of those. Cory Booker also did not get 15%. So let's just redo that. So Pete Buttigieg would get 4 of those delegates. AOC, she's in second place, so she'll definitely get some more than Josh Shapiro would. So that's how the first primary state shakes out. Pete Buttigieg is the front runner as of now. Going down to South Carolina, which is very likely to be the second primary, I think Cory Booker will do well with a black vote in the Democratic primary just in general. I think he's probably going to carry South Carolina here. And him being the only black candidate, it's also a benefit for him, too. He's not splitting the vote with anyone else. So I think he's going to be the choice of black voters in this primary. They're definitely going to gravitate towards him. And Josh Shapiro's at like 0% support with black voters in some primary polls. So that's how bad he's doing right now. Pete Buttigieg, of course, with his win in New Hampshire, I actually think he does get enough, just barely enough delegates to get a placement in South Carolina. AOC, I think, is also just going to get second here. She's going to be the choice of progressive voters, and progressive voters will at least be a block in South Carolina. Now with the rest of these candidates, I think Shapiro gets like 10-ish%, maybe 9. I'll give him 9. Tim Walz, he was the VP choice of Kamala Harris, so I think he's also going to be around 9%. And these other two candidates, they're only getting like extremely low numbers. They wouldn't get this low. I think they would at least hit like 4 or 5%. But in terms of the delegates, they're not getting any. Neither is Tim Walz or Josh Shapiro. They need to hit 15% or get at least some district delegates. And I could see Josh Shapiro maybe in the rural areas of South Carolina getting some district delegates. So I'll at least give him like 2. Not for Tim Walz, though. I don't think he'll get 15% at any congressional district. So with these remaining toss-up delegates, I'm going to give 5 to Cory Booker. He is the winner of this primary. I'm going to give 3 to AOC and 2 to Pete Buttigieg. So moving on, Whitmer, Newsom, and Walz are still at 0 in terms of delegates. Let's see what'll be up next in the primary. Nevada and Michigan. So I don't think anyone drops out yet. I think this is still a very fluid primary. So going over to Nevada, I actually think Newsom would do well in this primary state, but I think AOC is going to take this one. She's going to definitely have a good lead built up with Latino voters. Newsom probably gets like 19%. I think Booker definitely qualifies for some delegates after his win in South Carolina. Probably even gets past Newsom here. Whitmer and Shapiro, I don't think they get any delegates. I think Pete Buttigieg is also going to get some delegates here, but I think Booker is going to get second in this primary, while Newsom and Pete Buttigieg get those delegates. But I think AOC is the winner in Nevada. Booker second, Newsom third, Pete Buttigieg fourth. So at this point, I think Tim Walz is going to be like, well, I already have 0 delegates. I may as well just endorse somebody. And I think he's going to endorse AOC. He's more on the left of Democrats. And I think he'll look to AOC as the progressive to fit in the progressive lane here. So I think he endorses AOC, which will definitely give her some momentum, gain her like 5% support, 7% support nationwide. So now we head over to Michigan, and this is the whole reason Whitmer's been staying in the race is Michigan. Even though she has 0 delegates, I think she's going to have a lead in Michigan going up to this, and I do think she'll win the state by a bit more of a reduced margin. Even though it's her home state, she's going to still underperform a bit, while AOC is going to get second with a Tim Walz endorsement. Cory Booker is going to get third in this state. Again, he's going to do well with black voters, especially in Detroit. I see him doing pretty good with them as well. And Pete Buttigieg, I do think he's going to qualify for delegates in this state as well. It is technically his home state. Another home state of his is Indiana, but he currently resides in Michigan, so I think he's going to get some delegates here. And then Josh Shapiro, yeah, he's not even going to qualify for any delegates in this state either. He's probably not even going to hit 15% like these other candidates. So really, it's between Cory and Pete Buttigieg and which one gets third. And I think Pete Buttigieg, just because he resides in this state, he's going to get third, but it's going to be close between him and Booker. Because Booker's going to do well with black voters in Michigan, so that's definitely going to help him a bit. But that's how I'd adjust those delegates there. So looking at this, if Newsom isn't polling well in California, he's going to drop out. And let's just take a look at his performance. He only got a placement in Nevada. He didn't even do well in Michigan. He doesn't even get any delegates. And Shapiro's at 7 as well. So I think Shapiro's going to end up dropping out of this race. And I think he endorses Cory Booker. He could also endorse Whitmer here, but I think he's looking towards Booker as more of a reasonable chance at winning here. Yeah, it's a good thing to think about. I don't know. I think he leans towards Booker, honestly, because I think he thinks Booker has more of a chance. Newsom, I think looking at this Democratic primary, he's either going to endorse Pete Buttigieg or Cory Booker here. So, that's a really tough one. I think he's just going to endorse Booker as well, just because he thinks Booker's going to do well in the southern states, do really well with black voters. That's pretty much what he's going to come down to here. So we're at a 4-candidate race with Cory Booker, Gretchen Whitmer, Pete Buttigieg, and AOC going into this. And again, I think Newsom would definitely drop out because of how he was doing the primary overall, and he's probably behind in California at this point to AOC in the primary polling. So now we head into Super Tuesday. So going into it with Vermont, I think AOC is definitely going to be a pretty big favorite in Vermont to win this. Pete Buttigieg is probably going to get second here, but I think all of them at least qualify for some delegates. In Maine, I think this is going to be Pete Buttigieg's state. It's a small rural state. That's a state he does pretty well in. I think AOC gets second here. Cory Booker gets some delegates, and so does Whitmer. So they all qualify for statewide delegates there. Massachusetts, I think this is going to be an AOC state, honestly, and Pete Buttigieg is in a close second here. Cory Booker gets third. Would Whitmer, I think Whitmer might even just go at 14% here, so she won't get statewide delegates, but I think she'll get some district delegates here. So readjusting these totals, I give 5 to AOC, 3 to Pete Buttigieg, 2 to Cory Booker. Going down to Virginia, this is a Cory Booker state. I think he's going to do pretty well in an establishment state like this one. AOC is probably going to get, like, I would say 32%. Pete Buttigieg, well, Whitmer's probably, again, not going to hit 15% here. So I think she'll get some district delegates here and there. She'll get 15% in some districts. But I think Pete Buttigieg gets third. In North Carolina, I think this is another Cory Booker state. A bit of a weaker performance for him, though. Again, I don't think Whitmer gets statewide delegates, but she gets some district delegates. Pete Buttigieg would probably get third here as well. He would do well with college-educated voters, but just readjusting these totals here. Alabama, this is definitely a Cory Booker state. He's going to do very well with black voters in this state. Whitmer doesn't even get statewide delegates here. I think Pete Buttigieg barely gets to 15%. I think maybe he'll get up to like 17. AOC probably just hits 21 or 22% of the vote here, while Booker gets the rest. Tennessee. Now, this state's a little bit less blacker than Alabama, North Carolina, and Virginia, so I could see Pete Buttigieg having a reasonable shot at winning this primary state. And it'll be between Cory Booker and Pete Buttigieg here. I think Whitmer actually maybe gets about 15% of the vote, so AOC probably gets about third. Then it's between Cory and Pete, so it'll be close between them. I actually think Pete Buttigieg would narrowly get it over Cory Booker. It'd be pretty close between those two, but I think with this state being a bit wider than the other ones, he has more of a leg up. Same with Arkansas, but it's even more wider. So give this state to Pete Buttigieg, while Cory Booker's a little bit behind. And yeah, I don't think Whitmer even gets delegates out of this state. I think she's locked out again. So I just give Pete Buttigieg more of a victory there. I think he's probably going to win that state. Again, Pete Buttigieg is doing well in the nationwide primary polling, so I do think he's going to pull off some of these state victories. Oklahoma, pretty white state, very rural. I think he's also pretty favored to win this state. I think AOC actually gets second here. Booker gets some delegates, and Whitmer only probably gets like 1 or 2 delegates out of this state, just because she's not hitting the statewide math here of 15%. She needs to get that to even win some delegates. Let's see. Iowa and Minnesota would be up next, but we forgot about American Samoa. So with American Samoa, it's pretty much a crapshoot who wins. It's completely random. It just does what it wants. So it really depends on if they have any volunteers in this state as well. And it's really just like off of excitement. Last time Michael Bloomberg won the state, or no, won the district. No, won the territory. It's a territory. He won the territory just because it volunteers here. He was paying. So it's just basically completely random. And my guess is AOC wins it because she definitely has a lot of supporters on the internet, so maybe she gets some volunteers in this state, but I think Pete Buttigieg would be right behind her. Let's see. We're going to Iowa and Minnesota. So Iowa, I think Pete Buttigieg wins Iowa. AOC was probably being second. Whitmer, she's definitely going to try for this state. And I think she gets third here while Cory Booker gets fourth. In Minnesota, I think Whitmer also gets some delegates here. She probably gets like 18% of the vote. But I think AOC is going to come out with a victory in this state while Pete Buttigieg is pretty close behind her. While Cory Booker, I think he probably gets fourth in this state. So there's remaining delegates here, just adjusting them. I think it'd be something like this. So AOC gets a victory so far in 3 states, while Pete Buttigieg gets a victory in 4. Booker victories in 3. Colorado, it's another AOC state. And again, the establishment vote's going to be pretty divided here, while the progressive vote's going to be pretty unified. So I think she's actually going to get like 38%. Pete Buttigieg, let's see. I think Cory Booker's at least going to hit like 20-something. Pete Buttigieg is going to be in like the 25s. I think Whitmer, would she barely? I think she would barely hit the 15% mark in Colorado. Actually, same with Utah as well. I think she barely gets it. But I think AOC is going to come out with a victory in Utah here. Booker gets third. Pete Buttigieg gets second. Down in California, yeah, this is going to be a pretty big one, and they're definitely going to want to hit 15% here, but I think Whitmer's just going to be just shy of it, probably hitting like 13-ish percent, but she will get some district delegates here and there, so I'll give her like 10 or so, maybe 11. Yeah, I think about 11. So it's a pretty much 3-way race here. But I think AOC is going to come off with a victory here, kind of resembling Bernie Sanders' victory in the 2020 Democratic primary. Cory Booker is going to be in second place. He's going to get the Newsom endorsement, so that's definitely going to boost him a bit. He'll probably only lose by like 5-ish points here. Pete Buttigieg, I think he's not going to do that well. Don't think he's going to get like, I think 26% is where he's going to hit. So that's kind of how I see California going. And let's see if there's any other states we missed. Texas. Okay, so that's a big one. It's really going to come down to how well you do with Latino voters. And I think AOC will probably have a leg up here. Again, Bernie almost won the Texas primary in 2020. He only lost because everyone endorsed Biden last second here. So he was leading throughout the primary here in Texas. He's only lost it by like 4. So I actually think AOC would be favored in this state. Again, there's 2 establishment candidates dividing the vote here. So I think she's going to hit like 36% in Texas. I do think Cory Booker is going to be the one to get second place here with like 32-ish percent of the vote. Whitmer, again, I don't think she's going to hit 15%. I think she gets like 13%, so she'll win like 9 delegates or so, just my guess. Pete Buttigieg, she probably hits around 26-ish percent. So with these remaining delegates, I just divide it like that. So at the end of Super Tuesday, AOC comes out as a front runner, 573. Cory Booker 400, or about 500 rounded up. Pete Buttigieg 400. I think Whitmer would endorse Pete Buttigieg, honestly. Just because I do think she said some nice words about Pete Buttigieg in the past. She's more likely to endorse him and view him as a friend here. So I think she endorses Pete Buttigieg. All right. So looking at these primary schedules, we have Hawaii, Democrats abroad, Georgia, Mississippi, Northern Marinas caucuses. Okay. So Democrats abroad, typically progressives vote in this one. So I think AOC gets the win here. Northern Marinas Islands, it's basically a crapshoot who wins. I'm just going to say AOC probably takes it. Mississippi, this is going to be a Cory Booker state for sure. I think Pete Buttigieg narrowly gets delegates here. So does AOC. Does a little bit better than him, though, but Booker gets the rest of the delegates. Georgia, it's going to be a Cory Booker state. But I do think Pete Buttigieg gets like 21%. AOC probably gets 26%. Booker gets the rest. He's going to do well with black voters in Georgia and Mississippi. Then we have Washington. Washington State's going to go to AOC here. There's a lot of progressives in this state. So I think she gets like 40%. Booker probably gets about 32, while Pete Buttigieg gets 27. Honestly, I think Pete Buttigieg probably gets second place in this state against Cory Booker here. Okay, what's up next? Arizona, Illinois, Kansas, Ohio, and Florida would be within these primary states as well. So going down to Florida, I think Pete Buttigieg would get some delegates out of this state. Well, AOC gets in the low 30s, while Booker gets the rest. Then we have Ohio, Illinois, Kansas, and Arizona. So Kansas, it's going to be between AOC and Pete Buttigieg, but I think this is a Buttigieg state. Just narrowly goes to him. Cory gets third. Arizona, it's either between Pete Buttigieg or AOC, but I think Buttigieg is probably going to take the state. I think he's going to do very well with college-educated voters. AOC is going to get second, while Booker gets third. Illinois, I think this is a Cory Booker state. I think he's going to do well in Chicago, and that's going to get you a lot of votes in the primary. And AOC is probably going to get second here, while Pete Buttigieg does well in the rural areas. Ohio. So this is a pretty big test, and I think this is a pretty big swing state in this primary. Whoever wins this is definitely going to get a lot of momentum on their side. Now, looking at the candidates, there's two establishment candidates running, so I do think they're probably going to split the vote here, and I think AOC is probably going to get the narrow win against them, just because, again, they're splitting the vote. The progressive base is going to be pretty unified with AOC. But I think Booker is going to get second here. He's going to do well in the urban areas, while Pete Buttigieg does well in the rural areas, and AOC just gets a narrow plurality victory here. So I think Pete Buttigieg is still going to stay in the race. He's still amassing a lot of delegates here and winning states. So we have Louisiana, Missouri, and North Dakota up next. Louisiana, Pete Buttigieg is going to get some delegates out of this state, but Booker's going to get the vast majority. Missouri, I think this is going to be a Pete Buttigieg state. I mean, geographically, it's kind of surrounded by Buttigieg states, and it's a pretty rural white state, but there is a black population in this state too, in St. Louis, so that's a reason for Cory Booker doing well here. But I think Pete Buttigieg wins the state. Honestly, I think it's a pretty close contest between all three of them. So you could really make an argument for either of them winning here. But I think the splits will be something like this. AOC gets second, Booker in a very, very close third place finish. You almost get second over AOC, but I think Pete Buttigieg gets the win in Missouri. So what's up next? Oh yeah, North Dakota. This is going to go to AOC. This is a pretty progressive state in the primaries, typically. But I think Pete Buttigieg would do decent in this rural state, but not well enough. I think AOC takes it. So Connecticut, New York, Rhode Island, Wisconsin, and they would probably include Delaware into this total. So looking at Delaware, it's either Cory Booker or Pete Buttigieg winning the state. And due to its close proximity to New Jersey, I think that Pete Buttigieg would lose the state to Cory Booker. In Rhode Island and Connecticut, AOC is just going to win both these states because, again, the establishment vote's going to get divided here between Pete Buttigieg and Cory Booker. Same reasoning for Connecticut, but she's going to do a tiny bit worse here. I think Cory probably gets second in Connecticut, while Pete Buttigieg gets third. What other states do we have? Wisconsin and New York. New York's got a pretty big primary, but I think AOC is going to do well here. Cory Booker is going to get second, while Pete Buttigieg gets around 24% of the vote. Wisconsin, again, the establishment vote's divided, so I think AOC is going to get a narrow victory in Wisconsin. Cory Booker's probably going to get second, though. He's going to do well in Milwaukee, get a lot of turnout there, while Pete Buttigieg would get probably like 26% of the vote or so. So I still think Pete's staying in the race. He has 813 delegates. That's still a pretty good haul, and we're probably heading toward a contested convention here. So Alaska and Wyoming are up next, and I think AOC is just going to win Alaska because, again, the vote is kind of going to be kind of divided between Pete Buttigieg and Booker. Wyoming, I actually think Pete Buttigieg just gets a win here because it's a rural state. And Bernie even lost the state pretty convincingly to Biden after he dropped out. But I think just Biden was just going to beat Bernie here, even if Bernie stayed in. So then we have Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, and Indiana up next. Honestly, I'm just going to do all these primaries together out of order. It doesn't really matter at this point. I also forgot to do New Jersey a bit earlier. Said I was going to do it in Super Tuesday. But yeah, Cory Booker was going to win this state. So just looking at this, if we go back, I think that'll be something like this. I think Pete Buttigieg will be close in this state, but I think that Cory Booker, he's probably going to get over 50%, honestly. Let's just get him to that total. It is his home state after all. Yeah, it'd probably be something like that. Now let's just go through the rest of these states. Booker's definitely going to win Maryland. There's a lot of black voters in this state that he's definitely going to win over. Harris probably hits like 30-ish%. DC, Buttigieg barely gets some delegates. Booker wins the vast majority of them. Pennsylvania, I mean, Booker does have Josh Shapiro's endorsement, so I think he takes Pennsylvania here, while AOC gets like 33% or so of the vote. West Virginia, it's between Booker and AOC. I think Pete Buttigieg is probably not going to win this state, but I think just with AOC probably being more of a populist in this scenario, I think she wins it against Booker. Kentucky, this is a Booker state. He's going to do well in the urban centers of Kentucky. AOC is going to be pretty closely behind him. Well, Pete Buttigieg gets 24. Indiana, Pete's going to win this state. It is his former home state, so he's just going to have a bit of an advantage here. AOC again gets like 33% of the vote. Nebraska, it's I don't know. I think Pete Buttigieg would probably get a narrow win in Nebraska against AOC here, even though she would probably win by or lose by about 4 or so. South Dakota, I also think this is a narrow Pete Buttigieg state. Montana, I think AOC just wins it because, again, the establishment voters are kind of going to get divided here between Buttigieg and Booker. Idaho, it's a caucus state, but I think AOC is just going to have a narrow advantage here. New Mexico, I think AOC is going to do well with Latinos in this state. Yeah, I would probably put that there. Hawaii, I think AOC is going to do well in this state. Buttigieg gets second. Booker third. Oregon, another AOC state. These remaining territories. So Puerto Rico, she's going to do well with Latino voters. I think she actually does pretty well in this state. Booker also does pretty decent. Guam, it's just random who wins territories. Virgin Islands is a pretty rich island as well, so AOC's not going to do well here, but I think she gets some delegates. The rest probably go to Cory Booker. All right, so now we are done with all the primary delegate allocation. Now we're just going to go into multiple rounds of voting, and AOC's in first right now, Pete Buttigieg, and third, Booker, and second. So Booker going into this is probably going to be the favorite out of this. I think Buttigieg is probably going to end up voting for Cory Booker here with all his delegates in a promise for a VP spot. And I think Booker's definitely going to offer him it just to get the nomination here. So that's pretty much what it boils down to. Pete Buttigieg says, I'll be your VP, and then I'll give you your delegates needed to win, and Cory Booker becomes the Democratic nominee, mainly based off the support of black voters and him doing well in the southern states and winning some Rust Belt states here and there as well. But again, AOC loses because she just didn't do well enough in the endorsement game, and yeah, that's kind of how I see it going. I think Cory Booker wins the Democratic primary here. It goes through multiple rounds of voting, but he comes out the victor. So thank you everyone for watching this video. If you're new to this channel, you should totally subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Other than that, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.